And hello everyone and welcome to the Copyright 2.0 show, episode number 327. My name is Jonathan Bailey from the site Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. And joining me as usual, the co-host with the most, the man I am so happy to see after some significant time away. It is Patrick O'Keefe of the iFroggy Network at iFroggy.com. Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing good. I am jet-lagged, strung out, exhausted, sleep-deprived, under-caffeinated. This is tea. This is wrong. I should not be drinking tea. I should be drinking energy drinks right now. But otherwise, I'm doing great. How have you been the past couple of weeks?
Been fine. Just working. I haven't been traveling like you, so just kind of at home, working it out.
Anything good happening for you? Getting stuff done, I hope.
Yeah, I'm just getting stuff done, really. Yeah, that's about it. Nothing in particular to talk about that I can think of. Yeah, but you've had a busy couple weeks.
Yes, it was a busy couple weeks. I was in Budapest and Hungary. I was attending, part of the trip was attending the European Medical Writers Association annual, one of their, not annual, it's actually biannual, it's every 6 months, their conference, and basically hanging out there and speaking to them about plagiarism. Really enjoyed giving the talk. Really enjoyed hanging out with them. They are a great group. They make you feel welcome. They're great people, a great group there. And the other part was, of course, just spending some extra time hanging out, seeing Budapest, seeing the sights, and doing whatever there is to do in that fine city. And there turns out to be quite a lot to do.
So I guess let's break it up into two parts. So as far as the conference went, so what did you talk about?
It was about the rise of plagiarism in medical writing. It's pretty in medical research specifically. The medical writers, of course, they are responsible for producing a lot of the medical research that's published. So it's a very relevant topic for them. And some time ago, through a partnership I have with Authenticate, ended up doing a good deal of research into plagiarism in medical research, and found that that's a field where there's been a pretty big problem. There's actually been once you factor in for the increased amount of research being published, there's still a 10-fold increase in the number of retractions, and 25% of those retractions are due to plagiarism or duplication. So, which are kind of lumped into one category.
And this was the European Medical Writers Association, right?
Yep, their group, and talking, they are an organization, like a trade group that represent medical writers in Europe and sort of also help with accreditation and other things as well in the field. It's a really cool...
Now I'm looking at the brochure right now for the conference, actually. It's online. So, yeah, it looks like there was a lot of toss going on.
Hang on.
It was, definitely. How many tracks? It looks like at least Friday was many tracks, many different tracks going on at the same time.
Yeah, there were many different tracks. However, mine was a seminar session that was not up against anything else. So nice. I was not part of a track.
Yeah, I see that. The rising tide of plagiarism in medical writing. Free to attend seminar. So maybe you had some people who weren't paying, people who paid plus people who didn't, or you think it was pretty much all people who paid?
I think it was all people who paid to be there. I think it was pretty much everyone there. It was a full house.
Even though it was free to attend.
Yeah, it was free to attend. I think among the medical writers, if the only reason you would be in Budapest at that time was because you were paying to attend the conference.
Right. Yeah, I guess. I don't know how many medical writers are in Budapest naturally.
Well, there was a couple hundred at the conference, but I hung out a lot at the conference, got to know a lot of the people, and pretty much everyone. I recognized everyone from the rest of the conference. And it was weird. A lot of the things filled up, not the seminar. We had a full house. It was pretty busy. There was not a lot of seating room left. It was a large auditorium, but it was really a good group. There were some great questions, some great conversation took place. And medical writing is an interesting field when you get on the plagiarism because there's a lot of unique concerns to that field. Were you the only one there really talking about copyright, IP issues, etc.? Yeah, basically, to my knowledge, I was the only person there really talking about them.
Did you know anybody at the event, like that you had spoken to before, or besides organizers or anything?
Besides the organizers, no, not really. I didn't run into anyone new. Crystal was there with me, knew her obviously, but did not know many other people from there.
And was the whole conference in English? Were there any translators or anything like that?
The whole conference was in English. Obviously, the amount of English was understood depended upon the specific attendee. But it was an English-speaking conference. Yes.
Interesting.
Which was it's very interesting because a lot of the people I know were from like Ireland, UK, also from like the Netherlands, where English is a very predominant language, is very common. But also, a lot of Germans, Austrians, not a lot of Hungarians actually were attending the conference. I did not meet many Hungarians. I'm not saying they weren't there. I'm saying I didn't meet them.
So what was the? I guess I'm asking you a question that doesn't fit for you, but why Budapest? I guess it was just a destination for the organization to say, hey, that's a good place, kind of like Las Vegas in the U.S. I mean, not many people live there, but we go there as a destination.
They hold the conference every 6 months, or they hold a conference every 6 months. Maybe not the exact same one, but they hold a conference every 6 months.
Yeah.
And they rotate the city it's in. So it tends to float all over Europe. I mean, next one's going to be in Florence, then I think it's Dublin, Ireland after that. So they tend to rotate within Europe where it's going to be.
Gotcha.
I think it just happened to land on Budapest.
I didn't mean to imply that there's not a lot of people living in Budapest because
no, it's actually
there is.
Budapest is a city of 2 million people, as I learned.
It's just like a lot of people live in Las Vegas, but yeah. Anyway, I was looking at the language stats for Budapest, and according to let's see, I think this is just for Budapest. Yeah, 1.7 million people speak Hungarian, 99%, and almost all those speak as a first language, but 31% speak English.
Yeah.
So
there's
pretty good penetration.
There's definitely enough English speaking there to survive, as I found out. But it does pay dividends to learn a little bit of Hungarian, some basics. And I picked up a few things while I was there. My accent is terrible. I learned see ya, which is hello.
See ya?
See ya. Like we say see ya, see ya later, alligator. They say see ya for hello. So that was confusing.
So what does see you later mean? Would they just ignore the later if someone says see you later?
I guess so. Yeah, they would take it as hello, probably. I have no idea what they would if they didn't speak in English. I did not test this.
That would be like the man on first thing, like see ya. Oh, we're leaving. See ya. No, we're going. No.
Yeah.
So we talked about the conference. Now you stayed there longer. What did you do there in your personal time?
Personal time. We toured around a lot. The hotel we were at was on the Buda side of the river. Rather, it's interesting. Budapest is literally the combination of two cities, or three cities technically, Buda and Pest. And Buda is subdivided into Buda and Old Buda, but that's getting more complicated into this. So you have Buda and Pest, which are divided by the river Danube. We were on the Buda side for most of it. We were right by the metro station, which really freed us to go and tour whatever we wanted. We got a subway pass that let us hop on anytime we wanted, and we can go anywhere and within the Budapest area we wanted, and we traveled quite extensively. We did a lot of weird things. We were there about, I think, 6 extra days total, apart from the conference. We took a bus tour one of the days. It was a really great way to kind of scout the city and see what we wanted to go and spend more time on, and take care of those things. We spent a lot of time. There's the Castle Hill area is on the Buda side. It's where Buda Castle is. It's where the big cathedral is in Budapest, and a bunch of other stuff too is in the Castle Hill area. It's a really cool part of town. It's like the historic district. But it's kind of weird. You have to stop thinking of it as a castle, like in England, where it's like a big stone building and whatever. They use castle in the more accurate sense of it's a fortified area. You know, and Buda Castle is technically also Buda Palace. But we spent a lot of time there. We saw Buda Palace. We also saw the Hospital in the Rock, which is an actual hospital built into the hill, the rocky hill of Castle Hill rather. And we actually toured. And the scariest, I think, I run a haunted house, right?
Yep.
Run a haunted house. I am no pansy or sissy when it comes to going to haunted or scary attractions. I'm not a weakling at all. I do it for fun every year, multiple times at Halloween. I nearly, scared myself to death at going into the labyrinth underneath there, because there's like the hospital part is the furnished, and they did it up nice and got electricity and stuff in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like They actually built this up with the intent of making it a hospital and a nuclear attack bunker. It's still a bit unnerving, but it's it's civilization, right? But the labyrinth is the part of that cave structure they've done nothing with. It's got some bricks. It's got some historical things from from versions of Budapest that were destroyed. But basically, we got down there right before, not too long before closing. We felt kind of like jerks, and paid our ticket price. And they handed us literally a flame lantern and said, "Good luck." Like, well, which way to go? Whichever way you want. Caves are that way. Bye.
That's funny.
And so,
I mean, you wouldn't necessarily stop them from closing, so
No, we didn't.
Like jerks, they'll just close with you in there.
Exactly, that was the fear. We ended up touring it, and it's like you've played. I mean, I'm assuming you or your brother Sean have played games like Diablo, the dungeon crawler RPG.
I have not. I don't think he has either.
But that's literally what it felt like. You're going like a little RPG. We got our party of 2, Crystal and me, flame lantern.
Okay. Oh no, I play games like that. Yeah.
But we're waiting for the skeletons to jump out at any moment and attack us, and have the battle where we attack and they attack, and it's really, really creepy and really scary down there.
That's neat.
But it's a very unusual experience. But we saw that. We saw Hungarian Parliament, Hero Square, City Park. We attended one of the spas, the legendary mineral bath spas. Lots of great stuff to do there. Had a great time. Honestly, we don't feel like we left a lot undone.
That's good.
Which is good. There were a few things we couldn't do, but it's because they were closed because apparently of some government thing that was shutting them down. It wasn't, that like we showed up too late. It was, we planned on going, we went, and they were still closed.
Gotcha.
So, that was kind of frustrating. One of them was the Citadel, which is high up on the mountain that overlooks the city. We're really looking forward to getting up there. It was closed and never opened the entire time we were in Budapest. The same with one of the big art museums. So, nothing we can do about that.
Yeah, I saw your message on Facebook about you found a beer and you asked for people to take care of your dog inside your house.
Yeah. The greatest thing about Budapest, and the greatest reason for an American to go, is the currency exchange. They do not, even though they're in the European Union, they do not use euros. They use a Hungarian currency called the forint, Forint, and it is basically, to put it back into American, it's 1,000 forint equals about $4.50-ish. It's in the ballpark. And so what I would do to kind of get like a ballpark when I was converting was you would take the forint, like 1,000 forint, you put the decimal 2 points in, then divide by 2, and you get roughly the amount you're spending. It's still a little bit more because it's $4.50, not $5, but you get the idea. It gives you the ballpark. And so yeah, we found Belgian beer bars. There's actually a whole bunch we found that were selling very, very high-end Belgian beer that in the United States, if you were to buy them from a bar, would cost like $12.
Mm-hmm.
We're selling them for $4.50, the equivalent of $4.50 a bottle.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I was going to offer to take care of your house and sell your dog, but I didn't want to be that guy and leave snarky comments. So I was going to say, I'll take care of the house and sell your dog. But
yeah, it was it was quite an experience there, and it was really great because we made it a point to swing by once a night and try 1 or 2 new beers a night, each of us. And that way, over the course of the 9-day trip, we got to try, between us, I think roughly 30 different new beers. And it was a really great way to do it. And there was also actually Belgian Beer Fest while we were there. We attended that too. So as fans of Belgian beer, it was heaven in many ways. We could not have been more in heaven, Belgian beer in Belgium itself, I don't think. I don't think it would have been that cheap in Belgium.
That's funny. No, I'm glad you had a great time.
Had a great time. It was a great trip. Really enjoyed it. Got some photos on my Facebook feed. I'm going to be posting more sometime very soon. We got to get the photos off Crystal's camera. She had her DSLR professional camera with all the fancy lenses and took a bunch of photos. We just haven't pulled them off the SD card yet. So we'll be doing that.
Stop laying around, sleeping all day, and being lazy, and get those pictures done.
Gotta shake this jet lag, but we will be doing it soon and getting those photos up. And she's really looking forward to playing around more with the Lightroom and getting the photos up and doing all kinds of fancy stuff. So we'll have it up soon. So we'll have it up as soon as she's able to. Hopefully over the long Memorial Day weekend coming up.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking at some photos now. You have, because I don't think you have a lot. You have some, right?
No, I limited myself to 5 or 6 a day.
Okay,
basically.
yeah, because I only see like, I don't know, 20 photos in all here, maybe.
Well, it should be like 20, 25 photos. I missed some days, and
I think I see the beer festival though.
Yeah, that was one of them.
I think I see the beer festival.
Yeah, there was a lot of great.
Kind of an interesting building.
Yeah, it was. It was.
The roof looks odd. It's got like triangle lighting.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, they had a lot of interesting architecture, and the history of Budapest is basically one of a city that has been conquered very consistently and destroyed very consistently, and then rebuilt almost exactly as it was. Because during World War II, about 80 to 90% of the buildings were destroyed, and all of the bridges were destroyed. But then they just, rebuilt it all basically as it was. So that's kind of how they roll.
All styles come again.
Yep, exactly. Well, Patrick, we've got a lot of copyright news to get caught up on. We did miss one podcast, so we got a lot to do. You want to jump right into it?
Yep.
Well, on that note, everyone, big story. I want to paint a picture with this one. I want to get started by painting a picture. I flew internationally, obviously, to get to Budapest. Left on the 8th of May here locally, and then landed in Budapest on the 9th. With time zone changes, it was kind of the evening that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the air and traveling for about 16 hours with layovers and other things, right?
Yep.
I get to Budapest. It's we're really tired. All we're wanting that night really is to get some food and a good night's rest. You know what I mean? So we can start fresh the next day, right?
Yep.
But I hook up my computer, connect to the Wi-Fi, open up my feeds, and what do I have in my email but about not a dozen, but several people asking me what I think about this first story. It's like, wait, you couldn't even waited for a major story until I, land?
Yeah.
It's like, wow. And it's because, what did I say to you? This is true. What did I say to you, Patrick, right before I left and when we were planning our podcasts? I said...
Hi, sucker.
I said... Well, that too, but before that, I said, we don't have to worry about missing an episode. There's not too much happening anyway.
Right.
Dang it! Oh, man, I paid for that. Oh, my hubris before the copyright gods. I have been struck down. Because, like I said, while I was flying in a tube across the Atlantic, Oracle has won a major, major appeal over Google in its case. Now, long story short, this case deals with Java, the programming language Java, and I now have an official consultant on programming language in the house right now. My friend who is a computer programmer has helped me understand some of this. So I'd like to thank Ellie Ferguson for her assistance in this case, a very dear person for her assistance. But yes, basically this deals with the Java programming language and the APIs of it. Now, the API is how two programs communicate with one another. So if you wanted to write something in Java, you would need to know the APIs. Pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Google wanted to make the Android operating system, they made their own version of Java for it. But since they didn't want everyone to have to redo all of their Java apps, they used the same API. Now, the entire language was written in different stuff. It was written completely differently. But the APIs, basically the how-to program for Java, was the same. Oracle, which came to own Java after it bought out Sun Microsystems, sued, saying that was an infringement of their copyright. Well, the lower court came back and said, but APIs cannot be copyrighted. They are merely factual information, and they do not qualify for copyright protection. Well, on May 9th, while I was in the tube, in the air, hurtling through space, Google had suffered something of a defeat there when the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals came down and said, hey, by the way, APIs actually are copyrightable. Send that stuff back to the lower court. And basically, the Federal Circuit, which typically deals with things that like patent law and some IP issues that take place not in circuit courts, but on a federal level to start with, and like a nationwide level to start with, basically sent it back down to the lower court, demanding that they do a fair use analysis to ask, was the use of the APIs a fair use and still not infringing? But yeah, said that APIs could be copyright protected, and that has caused it. You would almost think it was apocalypse in the programming community, even though I think it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people in the tech space, and it just seems like it's almost uniformly a verdict that is, or a decision that's being, I don't know, criticized. But what goes beyond that, they're very unhappy with it because of what it represents for the space as a whole.
Yeah, and that seems to be the mentality. A lot of programmers and people in the field are upset. And I think maybe, it's a little premature. I understand the fear and like the nightmare scenario, what happens if this goes like all the way. But it's not the end of the lawsuit. That's very important to understand. This was sent back down to the lower court for a fair use analysis, which if that comes back in favor of Google, it really is kind of a moot point, you know? It doesn't really matter if APIs are copyrightable. If using them is almost always a fair use, no one cares. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could potentially create, the situation, the loophole.
Yeah, exactly.
That people to give someone an opportunity to, I don't know, restrict an API in a way that developers usually wouldn't want an API restricted, or would go against the spirit or the nature of an API.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, you're probably right. If it's fair use in most cases, then no one would care until there's a situation where it's not a fair use.
Yeah, exactly, and it's hard to
probably care.
Yeah, then they would care very much, obviously. But
right.
But yeah, so that a lot of it would come down to what sparked the fair use analysis. Why was it determined to be a fair use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If it was a very broad fair use analysis that basically positioned it so that there's no way using an API like this could ever not be a fair use, then it would probably still have much the same impact. But it was a very narrow fair use analysis, have a very different impact. So that's one of the things we have to watch out for with that. But honestly, this is kind of a strange case. We're dealing with two companies who copied an API, not a company that wrote for an API. This isn't a company that developed for Java being sued for writing a Java app and using the API in that capacity. They're being sued because they copied the API and replicated the functionality of Java through that. Mm-hmm. That's not something that happens nearly as often as merely developing for an API. So I don't think that's necessarily as big of an issue as it was. And as has been pointed out repeatedly, by publishing an API and making it public, you're obviously intending people to develop for it. There would be an implied license. So as far as the idea of this impacting how people develop using APIs, not as much of an impact, at least initially, as I think, as many people seem to be afraid of. But the idea of copying an API and building a new language or rewriting a language using it, that may still be impacted. So, that's something to watch out for in this case. But I don't think this is nearly as disastrous of a ruling as many have made it out to be, but it's definitely a potentially big defeat for Google in this. So I guess it's a case we're obviously going to keep watching, keep an eye on. But I don't know. This is definitely a big story. It was definitely something that I wish had not happened while I was hurtling through a tube in the upper atmosphere on the way to Budapest. It would have been nice to have a little time to think about it, and on the ground, rather than getting bombarded with emails when I first arrive.
Right.
So yeah, but it's definitely the big story that happened. So I guess we'll find out what the end result of it is. A lot of it's going to come down to what the lower court does with it now that they have it back. So I don't know. This could wind up being something the Supreme Court has to weigh in on eventually, though. If this is going to be something that's going to be this type of hot button issue, we've seen it with Aereo, we've seen it elsewhere where the Supreme Court's been eager to take on these types of copyright cases where interesting questions arise maybe we'll see that happen here too. Who knows? Because I'm very certain Google is going to appeal this ruling to the Supreme Court in hopes they'll take it up, even though there's, not to my knowledge, any other circuit that's weighed in on it. Maybe a lawyer friend of mine can chime in on that one and correct me if I'm wrong, which I don't think I am on that one. So yeah, that happened, and that obviously was a big thing. And my plan right now is for tomorrow, instead of doing a 3-count column, just do a thing, 3 stories I missed while I was in Budapest. It's going to be one of them, definitely. So I'll talk more about it. It's because doing a 3-count column for the entire 2 weeks is not going to work. That's not going to happen. We'll resume your normal 3-count on Monday, people that enjoy the column a lot. All 3 of you. So in other news this week, the Supreme Court has brought back a lawsuit involving the movie Raging Bull. This one has been a messy, messy case for quite some time. Long story short, the screenplay was written by Frank Petrella in collaboration with a Mr. I'm trying to get the name correctly here, Jake LaMotta. When Petrella died in 1981, his daughter inherited the rights, and basically she waited until 2009 to sue for copyright, to sue over the script, saying that basically, according to her claim, she believed that, I'm trying to remember what the claim was about. Like I said, I'm a little bit brain fried right now. You got to forgive me a little bit here. But long story short, she felt that she was getting that the movie was based, that the movie that came about the script was inappropriately licensed, and that they were continuing to distribute it without a license all these years later. Though she had notified them of that some time ago, she waited until 2009 to sue. The lower courts had found that the what is known as the doctrine of latches, which basically bars people from bringing lawsuits after an unreasonable delay, barred her from bringing that lawsuit. However, in a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court said the doctrine did not apply to copyright claims, and that if she's able to prove infringement, she will still be able to claim damages on it. So, yeah, she gets to continue her lawsuit thanks to the Supreme Court, which the whole case seems kind of crazy to me. Why wait till 2009? Why wait, nearly over 30 years, well, nearly 30 years to bring your lawsuit like that?
Yeah, that's the odd part of this, and I don't know, the part that I'm uncomfortable with is that she did wait that long. Unfortunately, her father passed away in 1981, and so that right there is 91, 01, 11. That's 30 years, almost 30 years, like you said, from his death, from when she got the copyrights. I don't want her to file a lawsuit within a year or two of her father dying. Like, people grieve. I'm not saying that it needed to happen within a year or 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but 28 years is a long time. And in another article I read about this case, she said that she'd notified. She did say this, but it was Justice Ginsburg who pointed it out, that Petrella had notified the studio of her copyright claims in 1991. Even that's 10 years later. But notified of those claims in 1981 and apparently held out to try to get more money, and only started to more seriously take a look at the lawsuit in 2005 when they issued the 20th anniversary edition of the movie. And I guess during that time, the studio had invested $8.5 million to distribute and promote the film, assuming that there was no other claim to ownership. So, pick that up from a USA Today or Associated Press story. The design is the same as USA Today, so I guess this is a Gannett paper, and it is. But it's a long time, and it's a long time to wait after notifying them about the copyright issues that she sees. I don't know that I want universally all copyright lawsuits to have to be filed within a certain amount of time. Certainly, we talk about when you become aware of the infringement, and that's a big deal in deciding intent and how people plan to proceed. But in this case, it is odd just because the movie was well known, it was popular. Certainly, she seems to be familiar with her father's work, and the claims that she's making if go that far back, likely may have come from her father, or may have been a feeling her father had. Or maybe she came to him on her own. But the point is, it seems like she had them for a long time, so not pursuing them, I don't know, it just creates a circumstance where the lawsuit is cast into some shadow. One other point, predictably, the sides are dividing as you would expect them to. The MPAA, the CEA, the DirecTV, TiVo all sided with MGM in this, saying it's unfair to allow a plaintiff to wait years. But the Authors Guild and the Songwriters Guild of America both sided with Petrella. So everyone's maintaining the party line.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because usually you see the Authors Guild and so the MPAA and so forth on the same side of most issues.
Right, but not if it's a writer issue.
So it's a writer versus a movie studio.
Yeah, there you go.
The divide it does pit one side against the other there a little more directly, but no, I mean the basic story about this case is that her father died in '81. She waited 10 years to first raise the issues at all, and then renew the copyright, and then 18 years past that to file the lawsuit. It does feel egregiously long term, you know, and it does feel excessively lengthy. And maybe, you know, we can say back in '91, well, okay, you renewed the copyright, obviously we're thinking about it. Why was the lawsuit not more quickly coming there? Why was it not like in '93 or '94, you know?
Yeah, and I would also argue that her not filing was, I don't know, not a great move in hindsight monetarily. You know, it's not like Raging Bull. I don't see any reason why Raging Bull has made much more money since then. I mean, you can argue that the Netflix streaming services are more popular now, and it is available. I plan to watch it actually soon with Sean. You know, that probably has coincided with the drop in sales of the actual physical media.
Yeah.
So, especially for those older movies that are available on Netflix. So I don't know that in hindsight it was necessarily a great move financially. To hold out. Certainly it's a negotiating tactic, but as far as money that they may have made a spike when that DVD came out, but, you know, I don't know how much more money it really means in her pocket.
And that's really one of the problems with this, is even though this allows her to file the lawsuit, statute of limitations, to my understanding, raises a separate question of how much damages she can claim.
Right.
So there's a separate issue there. Doctrine of latches would prevent her from filing the lawsuit, period.
Yeah.
But the statute of limitations still will limit the damages she can claim. That's still going 3 years back. So, yeah, you're right. Monetarily, that could be very, very stupid.
Yeah.
Just saying, it could backfire. This was filed in 2009, was it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that doesn't even go back to that 2005 release. Just saying, that re-release they did? Yeah, it doesn't even go back to that.
Yeah, the article I read says that she started to press for claims when they released that DVD. But she didn't actually go to the lawsuit until 2009.
And that may be an issue of, okay, she actually did start litigating then, this and that. It could still be that. But I don't know how that one necessarily works. That's kind of outside my scope. But still, the point remains that, yeah, the longer you wait on these things, the less you get, typically, you know?
Right. And she's seeking royalties, it says in this article. Has she made a specific claim as far as the amount, or does she just want the court to decide that?
No, that's unspecified damages is my understanding, and that's going to happen. Because basically what I'm expecting is she wants a ruling in her favor, and then she wants to negotiate.
Right.
Which is very typical with litigation, honestly. So, there you go.
Yeah, that's not to say that she doesn't have a claim. Certainly not. And especially you have a movie here that came out in 1980 and her father died in 81. So if there was an issue there, her father, the author of the work, the screenplay that's really at bear here, really didn't live long enough to seriously pursue it.
No.
And so, you know, that could delay things for any number of reasons. And studios take advantage of stuff like that. Companies take advantage of stuff like that. Not just studios, companies, people take advantage of situations like that. So, you know, people do bad things, and it's not to say she couldn't have a claim, but just the delay creates a situation where it's cast in not the best light as far as a lawsuit could be cast.
Yeah, I agree. It does. And like you said, none of this actually points to the merit of the claim, nothing to do with that, just an interesting delay, just an interesting tactic, I guess.
Yeah, you start to ask why.
An interesting and very controversial tactic.
Yeah. Have you seen Raging Bull?
No, I have not actually. I've been
Yeah, me
wanting-
neither. Me neither. So we're planning to watch it. It's on Netflix and Amazon, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those films I've been meaning to watch for a long time, but never actually caught.
Yeah, I got to catch up on that young De Niro. The other one I have to watch is Taxi Driver.
I've got to catch up also, speaking of boxing films, on some of the random Rocky numbers.
Okay.
I know I'm missing some. I've seen 1. I think I've seen 3. I don't remember if I've seen 4, and I know I have not seen the latest one.
I've only seen 1 and 2. Yeah, we gotta get up. I gotta catch up on that.
I've got to get some of the random rock. I've got like a weird hodgepodge of Rockies I've seen because I've never been like really into this series. I'm not like James Rolfe that really loves Rocky and knows them all. I catch them when I catch them, you know. It's one of those things. So I'm gonna have to do that too. Can fill the gaps there.
Interestingly, RagingBull.com is a community for financial investing.
Well, that makes sense. The bulls on Wall Street are, of course, the bull on Wall Street means something.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, that's also kind of weird.
Go up.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I got a coincidence on this. We're talking about Tarantino, and I actually watched From Dusk Till Dawn last night.
Oh yeah, that's a good movie. Actually, I do know that one.
Yeah, Tarantino wrote it. It was directed by Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And Tarantino actually stars in it as a character you really don't like. But anyway, he's in it, and so we watched it, me and my brothers, and yeah, it was an interesting movie. Sean enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good film. I mean, I really enjoyed From Dusk Till Dawn. It was a good movie. Not my my opinion, the best movie Tarantino's been involved in, but definitely a good one nonetheless. But yeah, Quentin Tarantino. That remember last time we were talking about him? He refiled the Hateful Eight lawsuit. Yeah, well, that's all gone. You can forget.
And
about
also, this also happened when you were in the tube.
Yeah, it did pretty much. Yes. I should just not get on airplanes is the moral to this copyright.
Well, the world doesn't stop. The world doesn't stop when you hop in a plane.
It doesn't. And not only that, I was asleep in an airplane when this happened. I slept most of this flight, thank God, because I did not sleep at all on the flight back, and I was miserable for it. But, yeah, so basically, Gawker Media is what we're called through their Famer blog, linked to a copy of a leaked copy of a script for his upcoming movie, The Hateful Eight, which had been posted on a non-files, I believe was the site, been posted there. And they usually, when blogs like The Famer cover this, they say, "Oh, it's been leaked, it's in the wild, find it yourself." Gawker went that extra step of linking to it directly, and Tarantino took exception to that and sued them over it. Now, the first lawsuit was tossed out because the judge said that basically Tarantino was accusing Gawker of contributory copyright infringement, but not alleging what was the actual primary copyright, the direct copyright infringement. What was the direct infringement they were contributing to? He then refiled that, clarifying what he believed the direct infringement was, and then less than a week later withdrew it.
Yeah.
And we really don't know why. It doesn't seem clear,
Yeah, maybe he's just... He could, I dream of a day when I'm so rich that I just file lawsuits to people who, are doing things that are good. So, he could just be playing around. He could be putting some pressure on Gawker. He could just be, or maybe he had a thought, decided it wasn't worth the effort. Who knows? I mean, I don't necessarily think it's worthwhile to rehash the story again and go through it all because it hasn't really changed.
No.
Gawker, I don't know if their hands are clean on this, but it's going to be tough to hold them accountable in a way that doesn't impact other things negatively.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is not going to be, at the end of the day, a big deal for him one way or the other. But it definitely had a lot of potential to be a big deal for journalists and for people reporting on these types of things.
Right.
You can imagine sites like Torrent Freak were probably watching this very closely.
Yeah.
Routinely cover on copyright infringement and related issues.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he just withdrew it, and we don't know why. We don't know what happened. We don't know what his reasoning was. It's just done, and that's the end of it. It's usually you don't refile a lawsuit just to retract it almost immediately. That's very bizarre, but it's Quentin Tarantino. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You gonna tell Mr. Tarantino he's wrong? No, I'm not. I would ask him what he was thinking, but I'm not gonna tell him he was wrong. So yeah, that case is now officially kaput. We don't have to think about it anymore. But I was still going to be very interested to see how this would impact journalism. But I guess we'll find out in another case. And these issues are going to come up again. It's inevitable. Well, in our next story, Wizards of the Coast, makers of the game Magic the Gathering, have filed a lawsuit against Cryptozoic Entertainment and Hex Entertainment over copyright and patent infringement over the impending MMO game Hex. Now, Hex was I'm trying to recall this, but it was a Kickstarter-funded campaign, or it was being funded by it'd been successful.
Kickstarter.
It had been successfully funded by. I was trying to see if it had been successfully funded or not.
Yeah.
It received over $2.2 million of its $20,000 goal, or $30,000 goal. Yeah, that's being successfully funded.
Yeah.
They were creating a computer MMO that apparently, according to Wizards of the Coast at least, used elements from the Magic the Gathering, the game. In fact, the lawsuit claims it is a nearly identical game to Magic the Gathering. Now, to be clear, Hex did not use any of the artwork or descriptions or names, but apparently used, according to the lawsuit at least, many of the mechanics of Magic the Gathering and put them into an MMO game for PCs. And because of that, Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast rather, is suing them and seeking unspecified damages. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting lawsuit. Because usually you don't hear a lot about lawsuits over games dealing with the mechanics of them. That's pretty unusual in and of itself. Usually copyright lawsuits over games involve, artwork or music or, something like that, not the actual mechanics. So that's kind of why I'm watching this one closely, because we see all the time, like, just to keep it within video game world for a second, we see all the time, like, those iPhone knockoff games that try to recreate the mechanics of the game, like, Drappy Bird or, Snappy Bird or whatever, those games that try to hone in on the Flappy Bird craze when it was there. Didn't use any artwork, didn't use any sounds, but just tried to repeat the mechanics. Well, that's what Hex is accused of doing to Magic the Gathering, and now we have a lawsuit over it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And one interesting thing about it is that the article at The Escapist that we linked to here, it mentions that the lawsuit cites a post made on a website called Threshold. Thresholdpodcast.com. It bills itself as Threshold, the Hex podcast. I don't know if it's official or not. Their about page is blank, so it kind of leads me about it. I don't know. I don't know if it's official. It doesn't seem to be, but anyway, the point is that they cite the post on this podcast dedicated to the game, which discuss the differences or the similarities in this case between Magic the Gathering and Hex. So a podcast dedicated to the game theoretically helped bolster a lawsuit against the game, which, I mean, you got to be honest, right? I mean, the podcast, I'm sure they're honest commentary. It's not to say that this is going to be a successful lawsuit. I think maybe one of the reasons why game suits avoid mechanics is because no one wants to be limited when it comes to mechanics, right? I mean, I think all the games benefit from all the mechanics, and if anyone were to get too protective, then it could negatively impact our games, your games, everyone's games. So, yeah, it is interesting for that reason, and I don't know if that's, I don't know. These articles about stories like this always make it sound like the lawsuit is a terrible idea, right? And maybe it is. It talks about things like this article talks about the number of starting life, what you do, right? The win conditions, kind of interesting, but only if they're really explicit and really exactly the same and really detailed. Tapping cards to activate actions, whatever. 5 types of spells. I mean, I can think of a million games with 5 types of spells. Creature colors, again, who cares? So I don't know. It really needs to be specific, detailed, and exact, and it needs to be super clear for me to say, okay, they should get sued and impacted. If they are that much of a plagiarist, then they should. But most people probably won't be. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking through the article. I remember scanning it while I was in Budapest. It's fascinating because have you ever played Magic the Gathering?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Are you shocked by that?
Huh?
Are you blown away by that fact?
No.
I didn't think so.
No. In fact, I ask more out of fairness and honor than
Thank you.
today.
And you didn't want to assume. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't want to assume anything, but I did not believe you had. But yeah, no, I mean, having played Magic a little bit in college, this definitely, looking at the cards, looking at the way the game is structured, it reminds me a lot of Magic. And they talk about how, they have different names for the same things, like haste equals speed, flying equals flight, vigilance equals steadfast, defender equals defensive, and so on and so forth. And goes
defender equals defensive. Holy crap. That's revolutionary.
But now they have the same functionality and they do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So there are definitely a lot of similarities. Now, are those similarities copyrightable or patentable? I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah.
That's what makes this case interesting,
Yeah.
Are there similarities? No doubt. Are they copyrightable or patentable or so forth? Are they protected? I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we move on, one small correction. You read from this article. It's not your fault. You read from the article that the goal was 30% on Kickstarter, $30,000 rather on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
It was actually $300,000.
Oh, sorry.
So not your fault. Not your fault. But the article on The Escapist is incorrect. It said 30,000. The actual goal, if you go to the Kickstarter page, was 300,000. But I mean, they still blew by at 2.3 million.
Either way, it was funded like 7 or 8 times over.
Yeah. So they had 17,765 backers. So
cool. I mean, obviously it's a very popular idea on Kickstarter. I mean, that's one of those things. On Kickstarter, it seems like an idea takes genesis, it gets a following, and it just shoots way past anything and everything it ever thought it could do,
Yeah, then Facebook buys it, and the Kickstarter community, they're entitled to something that they're not. So there you go.
Oh, God, yeah, that Oculus Rift mess that I've not talked about on purpose. Yeah, no, we'll leave it there. And we'll talk about Dish Network instead, and specifically their 30th anniversary, or birthday as they're calling it, or whatever, 30th year of operation it came upon, and they decided that they would give everyone on their service free stars for 1 year. What could be more happy and jovial and everyone love you than that? I mean, really, think about it.
Yeah, I don't even know if I knew about this, which is weird. I mean, I have Dish Network.
No, you do. I was about to ask.
And this is 3 years ago, it says. So I don't even know. I don't know if I missed the boat, or if I didn't have the right plan. I don't know. Like, was it for every single customer, no matter how high or low your plan was?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know. Anyway, I think I just missed the boat. But anyway, I moved Dish to a lot of customers. It would seem charitable. It didn't sit well with a lot of companies.
No, it did not. And the reason is because of windowing. And specifically, windowing is the idea that when a movie is first created, it is then released into theaters. And then it usually goes into... well, these days, it's lately been hitting video on demand, then DVD, but one of those two.
Yep.
Then it slides on down to pay cable television. Then it slides down to maybe, more further down in the channels, free network cable. Then it can go to basic. Then it goes network, and then somewhere in there is Netflix and those other things too. It falls somewhere in that end of the spectrum as well. But you get the idea. There are steps involved in where the movie is released. And one of the things you probably noted is that pay television comes before free television.
Yeah, normally
and
so.
Then, according to this lawsuit, by making it free, they had violated the contracts over windowing, and therefore they were infringing the copyright of the movies that were released on Stars. So, yeah, that's an interesting lawsuit. And the lawsuit actually comes from...
FX Networks.
Yeah, FX Networks.
That's what we're talking about today in this story, FX Networks versus
Dish
Network. But also Stars sued.
There were others involved in it, too, though,
Yeah.
And Stars, too, yeah. So basically, suing Dish Network. Dish Network is not popular with copyright holders between this and Hopper and everything else. They are facing lots of lawsuits.
Yeah, it seems like now there have been settlements in this, the article notes. So is the Stars suit settled? I'm trying to remember if I read that in here or not. The Stars suit, Stars did sue Dish for breaching their affiliation agreement. 2 months after that, FX Network sued both Dish and Starz for tortuous interference.
Yeah.
A very fun phrase to try to say. And or tortuous. I don't want to say that.
Tortuous interference.
Okay, tortuous interference. Let's go with that. And I'm looking to see here if there's something about Starz settling. I'm not seeing anything. The article by Eric Gardner here just vaguely mentions that settlements have occurred. So, yeah, I have, let's see, 75 thoughts on this. So, number one, I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, it's a perception suit, right? Because you would have to assume that Starz gets the same money either way in their deal with Dish Network. Starz did not get less money because Dish gave it away. Dish is paying them something. The cost is still, like when you sell something, the cost of goods sold. Like if I'm going to give you that item at cost, that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Dish still has to pay the cost. So it's not, I don't know if it's so much a money issue as it is a perception issue, because the thought is if people don't pay extra for it, then they think and get used to that, which would be their worst nightmare. They wouldn't want them to get used to not paying for Starz. So that's really the issue at bear here. And specifically, FX Networks paid to have the exclusive on 22 different movies. Yeah. And now those movies, which are on Starz also, weren't behind an extra paywall. So that makes FX mad because FX now is paying at the same kind of cable satellite television level as Starz for 1 year. Just for Dish, though. I mean, it's worth pointing out that DirecTV customers, Comcast customers, every other customer you can imagine paid for Starz like they would normally. It was just Dish Network customers. And because of that, though, to Dish Network customers, they were not the premiere. Those movies did not premiere on FX on the free cable, as they call it, even though cable you have to pay for. But FX, they weren't happy about that. And I can understand that. Yeah. I almost feel like it's first an issue with Dish. I think it's good they sued Dish. I mean, not Dish, sorry. I think it's first an issue with Starz. I'm glad FX sued Starz and not just Dish, because that wouldn't make any sense. Because Dish feels like that they can do this, and maybe they can, maybe they can't. I guess that has yet to be decided. Dish has felt like they could do different things in the past also, such as Hopper, that people disagree on. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting because Dish was trying to do something, and maybe it was, as Gardner kind of hints here, maybe it was a little revenge shot at Starz for giving the licensing to Netflix. Maybe that was part of it too, and that could just be some gamesmanship. But there's so many different threads to this. The gamesmanship, the perception, real money being made or lost. It really is an interesting story.
It is a very interesting story, and it points to one of the things I hear all the time. Is everyone's like, well, why don't they just make the movie available to everyone everywhere the minute it's released? Why is there windowing? Well, here's one of the reasons. There's a lot of contracts, a lot of people who've paid money for these various windows. The windowing system is A, lucrative, and B, there are a lot of people who are entrenched in it. So yeah.
I mean, and let's get down to the real reason. They believe it makes them more money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the real reason.
It's lucrative.
Above all else, because if they felt they could make more money elsewhere, they would simplify that probably.
They would find a way to make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of why it makes you scratch your head that they haven't figured out a way to get Netflix throughout the world yet. Because I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, they make more money this way, so that's why they do it. And there are exceptions, right? We've all heard there's been movies that have been first on that have been early on Netflix, or you can buy it while it's still in theaters. Like Amazon's had some of those. You can rent it while it's still in theaters. Yeah, I mean they're never like the Avengers. It's not like the AAA million, six-figure or nine-figure budget movies. It's always kind of lower budget movies or more character-driven movies. That don't have as wide a release, but still, there are some changes in this this windowing. I should say not mirroring. Mirroring would be the opposite. Windowing system. But they make more money, so that's why they do it. They can make FX pay them money. They can make FX say, we're going to give you guys money to be the first one. And so when Dish gave it away, that's when FX was not happy. Now, I mean, one could argue Dish should say, who gives a beep about FX? I mean, we have to work with them, yeah, but whatever. We are not worried about their agreement with Starz. We have our own agreement with Starz. So I don't know if Dish is totally evil here, to be honest with you. I think it's probably more in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, Dish did something they thought was a good publicity move, which it was. They don't think they necessarily set out to hurt any copyright holders. They were just trying to, do something nice for their customers. It'd be a good publicity move and generate them some press, and at what they felt was a reasonable cost. And now it ended up being a war over windowing, and that's what happened. You know, it's the story. So.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, because FX isn't like one of the major, they're growing, and they've gone pretty popular because they've had some hit shows like Sons of Anarchy. But they're owned by Fox, and there's actually multiple FXs now. There's FX, FX Movie Channel, and FXX, which haven't watched. I'm not sure what comes on it, honestly. I don't know if I have it. So
well, I don't know if we need to know based upon that name. That name leaves open to interpretation.
When they get to the third X, then we'll have something.
Well, then it's a Vin Diesel movie. So there you go.
Yeah.
They show all Vin Diesel movies, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, our final story this week deals with the famous YouTube viral video from last year, Space Oddity, as sung by Commander Chris Hadfield from the International Space Station. Very, very famous viral video. Got both Chris Hadfield and Canadian astronauts everywhere, a lot of publicity and notoriety, I guess you would say. And now it's no longer on YouTube. Basically, when they posted it, they had obtained a license to have it online for a year. That license expired, and it came down. It actually came down fairly late, several months late.
Mm-hmm.
But now it is removed from YouTube, and everyone is sad and is blaming copyright for it. Basically, is the story. It kind of unfairly, I think.
Yeah, you know, I definitely saw this story cross my feed, and it's one of those, I want to call it one of the rare instances where copyright becomes the mainstream story, right? Because as much as we talk about the stories like Quentin Tarantino, that stuff doesn't really matter all that much. Like, that's a blip on the news in some cases, if it even hits it. The Oracle thing is mainly about people who care about copyright and people who care about software development. So again, a niche. But this topic I saw in all different people's feeds. Like, I saw it in my Facebook stream, on my Twitter stream, not just copyright people. I can understand to some extent because it is people are saying that this is an example of why copyright needs to change or be reformed, because this video should not be a problem. And I guess you have to separate two things, right? You have to separate the license and the idea of fair use and how far it should extend, right? So David Bowie said it was okay to do this for a period of time, and that period of time has expired, and David Bowie opted not to continue it. So take that for what it is. Then you have the idea that covers and how much originality went into this video, what he did, if it should be fair use or not. And I mean, Hadfield, to his credit, Hadfield / the space program / whoever, tried to do it the right way and did it the right way, right? The legally 100% right, going beyond what maybe they even might have been legally required to do, and having the license and then pulling it down. So I think there's two kind of issues there, and they're both, I don't know, they're both interesting. I mean, David Bowie could have earned some goodwill by saying keep it going. Opted not to. It's his right if you believe copyright license is needed for this use. But yeah, I think it's kind of complex, and I don't think this sort of issue makes people fans of copyright, to be honest with you. And I think that's fair in a sense, but I can tell I know you don't feel that way. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, I can understand the frustration with it. It was a very popular video. Many people felt it should have been illegal without needing permission, but under current.
Now, first of all, before you get into that, what do you think of that idea?
What? Sorry, say that again.
Should it be legal without permission?
If it were, then you would have to. It'd be very tough to divide the line between any and every other cover. Is the problem? How do you separate this from bands playing covers in bars? How do you separate it from everything?
It's not in space. There's an easy line here, Jonathan. It's right there in front of you. Space, not space. Very simple.
International territory, no copyright law applies.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Anyway, go back to what you were saying.
No, so that's the problem. Is how do you separate this from every other cover song ever produced in history? Okay. Yeah, I mean, theoretically, if you legalize this, you could legalize the covering of every song, and I do feel songwriters should be compensated fairly whenever their song is covered. That's why we have ASCAP, BMI, etc. licensing. Yeah. I think that's perfectly fair, and I think it's a very reasonable system that puts minimum burden on musicians because it's done by clubs, and it overall seems to work reasonably well. Controversial sometimes, yes, but still overall works reasonably well for all parties involved. So I don't think it should be legal without permission, but it would be nice to see, and especially with YouTube Content ID and so forth, a way to make this so that it could stay up with some kind of compulsory license like we see with other cover songs, etc. Have it stay online, have it stay functioning, and David Bowie see some kind of fair compensation for it.
Yeah,
you know, that would be ideal to me. Is everybody win? But
and that requires everyone to agree.
Yeah, it does.
It's not the nature of copyright, in and of itself, because Content ID provides you with the opportunity to allow it.
Exactly.
But you can still say no.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's essentially what Bowie is saying, more or less, or his label, or whoever that makes the decision here. I don't want to act like David Bowie's at home, like space. Ha! I hate space.
Changed my mind about the space thing, man. I'm not digging it.
It's not an oddity anymore. It's an absurdity, and I decline.
I really don't. The question is why they didn't opt to extend it. It does seem kind of a weird decision to me. It doesn't seem like it was in anyone's best interest to take it down, including David Bowie's. And his labels,
I agree with that.
I don't understand the reasoning. I'm sure they have it, and I'm sure they could explain it to me for me. But I don't see it from where I'm sitting today.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have an explanation for that. Yeah, it's hard to say, why would I want to pull this down, right? What possible? I don't see how it's causing you to lose money.
No.
I can only see how it's causing you to gain money and goodwill, maybe, which equals money. Exactly. Honestly, this internet age, goodwill equals money. And to your point, there's a lot of artists out there who do make covers and license the covers. One artist in particular stands out to me. She's a singer named Megan Nicole. She releases covers on YouTube. The moment it's available, it's on iTunes per se. Very smart. Her team are very savvy, very smart. They have it all licensed. She shoots like real videos for the cover, so they smooth out all the details. And they make money, and the original artist makes money. So it's definitely a business there, and it's just kind of the uncomfortable world we live in right now when it comes to especially covers and derivative works and the internet age. It's one of those areas where the average citizen doesn't care about covers. If I'm being honest, I don't think the average citizen cares so much about the copyrightability of covers and how it might impact the artist. But it's definitely something that artists, and we've talked about this, copyright holders being or vociferous copyright holders being a minority. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's hard to get the public to rally for Bowie on this one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I blame him. It's just hard. It's hard to yay, Bowie, pull it down.
Yeah. You get it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and what's...
It doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just the way it is.
One of the things about technology is that it's supposed to make our lives easier, and the concept of reducing friction, Yeah. The idea of reducing friction. Well, one area where friction has not been reduced yet is copyright. Unfortunately. And that's, in fact, if anything, copyright has gotten more complicated and more difficult with technology. And that's something that does need to change, I think. This is an area where we're seeing evidence of some of that friction. So maybe that's something we can work on, improve, and shoot for, and use this as a sort of something we need to look for changing in the future and finding a way so that, like I said, I want an environment where everyone wins. That's my end goal. I want Bowie to get his fair compensation for the use of the song. I want everyone to win. I don't see why anyone has to lose here.
See, that's where we differ, Jonathan. I want an environment where everyone loses.
Everyone loses equally.
Everyone to lose.
Everyone must lose equally.
That means we've done it right. Everyone loses. And also, let's just speak about the internet for a second here. People say this, and it's not a reason to say that it's okay. It's not a reason to say that, if I don't want my book here, it shouldn't be there. But let's just speak reality, like that meeting at South by Southwest. The fact that he wants it down doesn't mean it's gone from the internet. Far from it. It means that there's a new wave of interest in it, and people are going to upload it on YouTube, but once they get taken down, other places. It's not going away, so you may as well make money off it.
Yeah. It's an odd decision on Bowie's part, but it is his decision at the end of the day.
I agree.
That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
Well, anything else, Patrick? Any further thoughts?
Well, I think we need to talk about some Led Zeppelin.
Oh, whoops. I didn't open the last story. Jeez, that's my fault.
No, you didn't even need to mention it. It was totally natural. But anyway, so Led Zeppelin, I'll talk about it a little bit. I actually read the story. I'm on Spotify. So I like the way I said that. I actually read this story, as if to imply I don't read the other stories. I read all the stories. I read all the stories. So Led Zeppelin is being sued. Well, I know being sued, but it's being sued by members of a band, really one member, the bassist, and also the estate of the guitarist, Randy California, for a band called Spirit, which I've never heard of. Have you heard of this
Never
band?
heard of, no
Okay,
idea.
so this is a band called Spirit, but their music is on Spotify. We'll say that. So you may not have heard of them. But they had a song called Taurus, just like the Ford Taurus. And it was 1968 they put that song out. But in 1971, Led Zeppelin had their big hit Stairway to Heaven, of course. And what they are alleging is that the opening riff of Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven borrows from, they call it the opening measures, borrow from their song Taurus. And Taurus is an instrumental track, no vocals on it. But you can go listen to Spotify right now. Listen to the House Stairway to Heaven. Led Zeppelin's on Spotify. Listen to Taurus and compare and see what you think for yourself. One interesting note, California, who has since passed on, since we're talking about his estate here, he mentioned in an interview in 1997 that, you know, he basically felt that they took it from him. And he said the guy made millions of bucks on Stairway to Heaven and never said thank you, never said, can we pay you some money for it? It's kind of a sore point with me. Maybe someday their conscience will make them do something about it. So now, and we talk about delays here. We talk about delays here too.
Yes, we
right?
are.
I mean, 1997 is when he gave this interview. It was published after his death, so he died before early 1997. And now we're in 2014, and there's a lawsuit by his estate, Randy California's estate, and also the bassist Mark Andis.
Yeah. Here's my thing. Here's my thing about this, and the reason I'm kind of holding my head and rubbing my eyes. It's Stairway to freaking Heaven. You are hard-pressed to find a better-known, more popular, more famous song. There are guitar shops in my city, I have been to them, that ban people from testing guitars with the intro to Stairway from Heaven because it is so common. I mean, there are literally signs up saying, no Stairway to Heaven.
So if it is their, what you're saying is, if it is their riff, then man, oh man, there should be a financial windfall coming from them, from guitar shops and from everywhere. Everyone who ever paid a public broadcasting license or anything like that, there should be just a windfall.
That's one of the things, I guess. But the other is,
that's one way to take your point.
Yes, that's one way. You can interpret where I was going that direction if you so choose. But the other one is, why am I only reading about this lawsuit in 2014?
Yeah, because again, the years we have are Taurus 1968, Stairway to Heaven 1971, interview published 1997, lawsuit filed 2014. So, and if he had that belief that it had been taken from them, he mentioned that, or this mentioned this article that Spirit crossed paths with or played the same events as Zeppelin in 68, 69. So, I mean, there's the argument here that they waited because they didn't have the money to sue. I think that's what's mentioned in the article here. I'm trying to find the exact spot. I'm pretty sure I did read that. But, who would, I don't know, like, you tell me you can't find an attorney who would sue a Zeppelin? I don't know. I think you can find an attorney to sue most people. So, and take a cut of the winnings.
Yeah. If your case is that solid, and you've got a defendant that obviously has the money, you can usually find a lawyer that'll take it. You know what I mean? If you've got the registration, you've got a solid case, and you've got a defendant with deep pockets, you can find an attorney that's willing to take the gamble.
So did you listen to these songs at all? I know you know Stairway to Heaven, but did you listen to the other one?
No, I've not listened to the songs.
Okay, so I did. I listened to it a little bit. Okay. And I got in my non-expert, right, and in my non-classically trained opinion, it's going to be tough. You already implied this. It's going to be tough because frankly, I don't really hear it. And I've read the comments in these stories, and it kind of made sense to me that what I'm hearing that might sound anywhere similar is just chord progression. So I don't know. Like, you're going to have to get a music expert in there to testify that this sounds the same, because I think to the average listener, there's not a whole lot to go on here. There's not a whole lot for like a judge to listen to and say, yeah, dismissed. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a favorable case. Now, that said, of course, these music cases are always so tricky. We talk about it every single time when they try to identify elements in songs and say this is this. If it's not black and white, it's hard to pursue and harder to rule on. So, yeah, but it is Zeppelin versus Spirit.
Yes, it
And
is.
I love that name too because I joke about this. It's like these bands. It's like you knew they got into the band game early. Their name is Chicago. Their name is Spirit. Like they got there early. They don't have to be Five Finger Death Punch. Like they just got a single dictionary word or a city as their name. They got into the game really early.
You know, there's a great joke about that. It was Shirley
It's my
Manson.
joke, Jonathan.
No, but Shirley Manson and the guitarist from Garbage, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but sat down and they asked him, why did you choose the name Garbage for your band? And there was the guitarist who responded. He said, you know, when you form a band, you've got to go down to this government office, and you've got to pick your name from this giant book. And when we got there right before closing. There's only two names. It was Garbage and Hootie and the Blowfish. So we chose Garbage, and we picked wrong. But yeah.
And the Dolphins make me cry.
Exactly. Oh, God.
That's from a Hootie and the Blowfish song. I don't know if you remember that or know that. But it is. Dan Marino was in the video.
Do you have any idea how much seething, burning... Now, I'm not going into my history with Hootie and the Blowfish right now. I'm not. But suffice to say, I went to the University of South Carolina right as they were taking off, or shortly after they had taken off, and I was oversaturated with Hootie and the Blowfish many, many times over because of that. So,
yeah, well, that song, the song it's mentioned on was actually, the massive hit, Only Want to Be With You.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they mentioned that the Dolphins make me cry, which I guess is his favorite football team, and obviously our lack of a championship in many years. But was that the year? That was '95. Was that when you were?
I was in the University of South Carolina
Yeah,
from
that was when you were there.
I was 90. I was there for 90. I got there early '98 and through 2002.
Okay.
So I was after,
that
but
hit was a little younger.
was before then, but they were still relevant and still around at the time.
Right.
In fact, this is true. I stayed in the same dorm room Darius Rucker stayed in his freshman year.
No.
The exact same room.
Baller status.
And people would actually knock on my door and ask to see the room. And I'm like, I don't know why. It's the exact same as the other freaking rooms.
It might be a little darker than you remember it being in this room. Totally different music styles here.
Yeah, exactly. It was, yeah. My roommate and I were both into like heavy metal. We had like our Atari Teenage Riot and Metallica and all
This
these.
is when you had tons of piercings, right? All over your face, like you had your.
I've never actually had a piercing in my life, Patrick.
Yeah, well, that's one thing we have in common. That's yet another thing we have in common.
I have never had a tattoo, never had a piercing. There you go.
There you go. There's two things then.
There's two things, yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Are you the type of person who puts bumper stickers on their car?
Sorry, say that again?
Are you the type of person who puts bumper stickers on their car?
No, I've never put a bumper sticker on a car either.
That's the three then.
I've never actually. I have put magnets on my car for the haunted house. Every time I have door magnets to go on.
But it was important to you that you could pull it right off, correct?
Exactly. When it had to come right off when it was done.
So, then we've still got that in common.
In fact, they were so easy to pull off. One of them has been stolen.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, better than the sticker.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet you still felt, you know what? I'm glad this isn't a sticker.
Exactly. Yes, actually, that's true. I did.
Okay, so we still have that in common.
Yeah,
all right.
Well, Patrick, now did we have any final thoughts? No, we've talked about something.
No, I think we've covered it all.
All right. Well, thank you for catching that. Like I said, I usually open all my stuff in tabs, and I must have not opened the last story. I apologize.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Jonathan Bailey. I'm from the site Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. I'm also username Plagiarism Today on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere else you can probably think of, to Instagram, whatever. Go for it. Have fun.
And I'm Patrick O'Keefe. I blog at managingcommunities.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn as Patrick O'Keefe, and also my personal blog at patrickokeefe.com.
On that note, everyone, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you guys next week.